Okay, so we're going to talk about bacterial diseases. So the first thing that we need to mention is that not all bacteria cause disease. Some bacteria can fall under the category of being useful, and some bacteria can also fall under the category of being harmful. So there is plenty of useful bacteria that can be found in the intestines and also can be used for industrial processes. However, there is also harmful bacteria which can cause problems such as food poisoning or causing sore throat, or some sort of bacterial infection, or certain STDs are also caused by bacterial infections. So, to talk about the structure of a bacterial cell, so a bacterial cell, or at least a large bacterial cell, would be perhaps, say, 5 micrometers in length, which in contrast to, say, for a virus, which is about 0.005 micrometers, is quite large. But in comparison to, say, for example, an animal and plant cell, which would be at a maximum of about 500 micrometers in length, a bacterial cell is quite small. So bacterial cells, first of all, contain a slime capsule that surrounds them, and this is to help protect the bacterial cell, particularly when, say, for example, a bacterial cell enters the stomach. It prevents the acid breaking down the cell wall. Then the bacterial cell is going to have a cell wall as well as also a cell membrane. Now, because the bacterial cell is reasonably simple, being what we call a unicellular organism, meaning that it is an organism made up of just one cell, it does not require lots of complex DNA wrapped into chromosomes stored in a nucleus. So it stores its DNA as just a single strand. And as well as this, the single strand of DNA, it can also store DNA in a circular strand, and the circular strand is called a plasmid. And then finally, a bacteria has a flagellum, which is used for movement, as well as also a cytoplasm and ribosomes, which are required for making protein. And then also a cell membrane that we have that controls what goes in and out of the cell. Okay, so unlike a virus, which is a piece of code wrapped in a protein coat and is not considered to be a living organism, bacterial cells are living unicellular organisms, and a virus which enters an animal cell and then replicates to form various different versions, which then causes the cell to burst, and then these viruses go on to infect nearby neighboring cells. With bacterial cells, the bacteria itself can just divide by themselves to form 2 new copies, which generally speaking tend to be genetically identical. And then these 2 new copies will go on to divide to create 4 copies of bacterial cells. And then those 4 copies will go on to divide to create 8, and then 16, and then 32, and so on. And before you know it, even over a short number of division cycles, you can end up with a large number of bacterial cells. And when we have a large number of bacterial cells in a particular location, this can then go on to form a colony, which can lead to a bacterial infection. Generally speaking, bacterial infections tend to stay quite localized. So that means that they stay in one location on the body, say for example a sore throat or food poisoning or an STD remaining in the genitals, in contrast to a virus which ends up spreading generally around the majority of the body So the two bacterial diseases that we need to know about, the first one is Salmonella, and this is more commonly spoken about as food poisoning. So the way that this can get into the human body is obviously through food, and generally speaking it can be uncooked meat, especially chicken, as well as the actual eating of the meat itself. It might well be from poor hygiene, particularly surrounding the hygiene of kitchen equipment. So if a knife was used to cut a piece of raw chicken and the same knife was used to cut up salad and that salad's not cooked, then we are at risk of picking up salmonella infection. So the ways that we can prevent salmonella spreading would be the opposite of this. So making sure that food is cooked properly, so cooking food correctly, and also having good hygiene when it comes to kitchen equipment. So one of the symptoms of salmonella is going to be vomiting, as well as diarrhea, and a problem with this is that it also leads to stomach cramps and stomach cramps. So the way that this can be treated is with antibiotics, and antibiotics are going to be drugs which target the bacteria, which in this case is the salmonella, and destroy and kill that bacteria. Now, it's worth noting that antibiotics cannot be used successfully for viral infections, as viruses enter human cells, and human cell is different to a bacteria cell, so the antibiotic will only be able to target the bacteria cell. So our second disease, bacteria infection that we need to know about is gonorrhea. And gonorrhea is an STD, so a sexually transmitted disease, and this is going to be spread by having unprotected sex. And so therefore the way to prevent this is be using the condom, or for that matter, abstaining. So not having sexual intercourse, particularly with someone who has the disease. The symptoms of this can be a painful yellow-green discharge, and as well as that, if not treated, it can lead to infertility. The way this can be treated is with antibiotics. So, if you pause the video and see if you can write down the appropriate labels for the appropriate part of the bacteria cell, and also if you can write down the function of the various parts of the bacteria cell. So if you give that a go now. Okay, so first of all we have the flagellum, which is going to be number 5 on our label here. So this is our flagellum, and that is going to be required for movement. Then we're going to have our cell wall, which is going to be number 6 here, so inside the slime capsule but outside the cell membrane, and that is required for support. The slime capsule for protection, which is going to be on the outside, which is going to be number 4. Then we've got the cytoplasm, the gel-like substance which holds everything together, which is going to be number 8. Our plasmid, which is number 2, which is our circular strand of DNA. Number 1 being our single strand of DNA, which contains genetic code, and we don't hold the genetic code in the nucleus, so bacteria cells as a result are examples of prokaryotic cells, unlike animal and plant cells, which are eukaryotic cells. So prokaryotic meaning that there is no membrane-bound nucleus. The DNA is just either held in a single strand or in a plasmid. Then we've got our ribosome at number 3, which is responsible for building proteins, and finally our cell membrane as number 7, which controls what goes in and out of the cell. So if you try and label the following statements as either relating to bacteria cells, so B for bacteria or V for virus. So if you pause the video and have a go at writing down what you think each statement relates to. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. So replicating inside cells is going to be a virus. Non-living is also a virus. About 5 micrometers in length is a bacteria, and 0.005 in length is a virus. Obviously, those are quite rough estimates. There's big variation. Surrounded by a protein coat is a virus. Divides by itself is a bacteria. Causes cell to burst is a virus, as when the virus enters the cell, it makes replications of itself in large numbers that then cause the cell to burst, and those viruses go on to infect nearby neighboring cells. A prokaryotic cell is a bacteria. Why? Because it doesn't contain a membrane-bound organelle, and a virus is not a cell, it's just a piece of DNA or RNA wrapped inside a protein coat. And flagellum for movement is also going to be our bacteria cell. Okay, so now what we're going to do is see if we can pull together what we've learned about viruses from the virus video, as well as also bacteria from this video, and see if you can draw this table and complete the table. So we're going to need 3 viruses and 2 bacteria, how they're spread, symptoms, treatment, and prevention. If appropriate, not all have treatments, so you can leave part of that blank. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the opportunity to write out this table, and I'm going to do this in a stepwise manner where we have various different pauses on the video. So see how far you can get. Okay, so hopefully you've given that a go, and I'll do my first check by writing in the different viruses. So HIV, tobacco mosaic virus, TMV, and measles. And then for our bacteria, so these are our viruses. And then for our bacteria, we've got salmonella and gonorrhea. So I apologise, we've got one extra space here, which may have thrown people, but we'll leave that blank for the time being.